Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's session. My name is Deirdre Fryer. I'm the Head of Solutions from Syspro Africa. And welcome. So excited. I can't believe we're on our fourth and final episode of our DX journey. For those of you that have joined us on our previous, you know how I like to start it out. Let's get everyone chatting. So those of you that are new to join us, please look at the bottom of your Zoom tool. What you will see is a chat section. Hop onto your chat quickly, and I just quickly want to find out from everyone who's joined us, where are you from? And I can see some people are already used to this. Morning from Johannesburg, morning from Cape Town. WMS, like it. Hi, Vessel. Fourways, right next door to me. Kempton Park, welcome. Stellenbosch, good to have you on the line. There we go. PE made the list. Welcome from Port Elizabeth. Benoni and Pretoria. Pretoria had to make the mix. Welcome, Vanderbijl Park. I like it. Another one from Johannesburg. And we have two from PE. Great to have you. And there we go. Durban topped it. Durban made it in. Welcome from Durban. And we've got some more fellow Cape Townians. Joburgers. Richards Bay, welcome. Guys, if you are chatting on the chat, just remember you can choose. By default, it says only to panelists, or you can choose all panelists and attendees. And then other people can see your comments and your posts as well. Jambo, Mombasa, Kenya, welcome. Good morning, Richards Bay. East London, Grahamstown, Rose University, welcome. And we've got another Pretoria candidate. Pretoria's ranking up there. Good morning, everyone. Nakuru, Kenya, good morning, welcome. Welcome, Durban. I see we have another Durbanite coming on the line. Really good to have everyone with us this morning. Good morning from Cape Town. Oh, Cape Town's topping the list. I think their numbers are going up. Morning, Sandton. Oh, we even had a Germiston sneak in. Good morning from Germiston. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Really, really great to have everyone on the line for this final session of our DX transformation. So our build-up so far across the DX journey has really just been, if I go back, sure, I can't believe it's 8 weeks already, and we go back to the start of our session, you know, it was all about the introduction into digital transformation. What do we need to consider as a business? What are the things that we need to plan for? It's more about the journey of digital transformation and just really what that looks like from a business context. And then our following on sessions, what we started doing is we started unpacking some of the tools around digital transformation, those tools that enable us to adopt and embrace digital transformation into our organizations. So we've talked about the benefits of cloud. Our last session, we talked about some areas of automation and IoT coming into play. And really this morning's session is just continuing on that theme of what do we need to consider from an automation perspective and robotic process automation through to these wonderful things called digital citizens. So before we get into the detail of everything, I just want to remind everyone about our hashtag SysproDX. And really what we like to do in the sessions is also just promote our DX enthusiasts. So what you are able to do is if you can tweet us or post any post on LinkedIn or Twitter with the hashtag SysproDX, we will be monitoring those social media platforms during the course of the morning. And for those that post the most or create the most excitement on those social media platforms, will be crowned our DX enthusiast of the session and stand a chance to win a nice prize. We will announce the prize in the mailer afterwards. That gets sent out after the sessions later on in the day. And so please take to your social media platforms during the session or even after the session. We generally monitor those posts up until about lunchtime, and you could stand the chance of being that Syspro DX enthusiast. So on that note, I just want to quickly hop onto our agenda so that everyone also just has a bird's eye view of what we're going to be discussing this morning. So looking at our agenda, our first speaker will be Johan de Prier from IOCO, chatting to us about automation. We will then unpack a lot of that with him and go into some questions and answers. So again, on your Zoom tool down at the bottom, you will see you have a Q&A icon where you are able to post questions while the speaker is speaking. Any questions that you do post, I will be moderating and looking at, and use that to engage and ask those questions to Johan at the end of his session. So please feel free to post any questions. We'll try and get through as many as we can online. And then if not, try and respond to you afterwards as well. We will then head on to our second speaker, which is Lauren from Bidvest. And she will also be introducing us to a wonderful digital citizen called Alice. And from that, again, use your Q&A while Lauren is talking or presenting. You're welcome to ask any questions in the Q&A session. Again, I will be moderating those questions, and we'll discuss those questions as much as we can after Lauren's discussion with us. So really fun-packed morning. I think it's going to open up a world of insights. Really looking forward to talking a lot about these digital citizens that are entering in our world. So without further ado, I'd like to start off with our first speaker. Our first speaker is Johan de Prier. He's a business development executive focused on automation. Yeah, Johan works for a company called IOCO and previously worked at EOH as the business unit head specializing in deploying Microsoft-based solutions to optimize and increase productivity. His role now is designing solutions that encompass the entire digital ecosystem, driving innovation and thought leadership, and assisting customers to unlock the value of their digital investments in a cloud-first world. So welcome, Johan. We're very excited to have you with us this morning, and looking forward to getting your insights and your sharing with us around automation and all these different approaches to digital transformation. Welcome.
Thanks, Deirdre. Good morning, everyone. So while I quickly share my screen, as a quick introduction, like Deirdre mentioned, I am part of the automation business in IOCO. And what that essentially means is I have the privilege of helping customers on a daily basis, try to find opportunities to optimize their organizations through automation in support of their overall digital initiatives. And that's really what we want to share with you today. So maybe as a quick start, we're going to start off with a quick poll. So currently, how many of you see automation as a strategic enabler in your organization? Because that is sometimes quite an interesting topic. So while you respond to that, I'm quickly going to run through the slide. So if we look at automation, what we've seen in the market, and especially in the African continent, if you consider the impact of the recent COVID pandemic, and even before that, is that companies are under immense pressure to stay competitive. So a lot of the market drivers we see locally is cost saving and cost reduction, especially lately. It's a very relevant topic. Risk reduction, so risk always has an impact if not reduced and mitigated, which could be financial or brand related. Governance and compliance, so you never want to end up with fines, and in the GRC space, fines can be quite a significant impact. And then I think the last two also quite important. So employee satisfaction. Your employees really make your business work, and there's no easier way to lose an employee than giving them a dissatisfying job. And then customer satisfaction, customer loyalty has been going lower and lower in recent years. So driving out customer satisfaction to drive retention is also quite a prominent driver that we see. And on the right-hand side, we've got some statistics from the industry, which by this time is already a year old. But, in our space that we play, we've seen slower adoption in developing countries, but still think that, it's relevant. And I think the bottom is the most prominent, where about 50% of organizations are actively driving to implement automation to really improve their businesses. And this is from Gartner and Forrester. So, on a global level, that tends to be the trend. So if we could maybe look at the results quickly of the poll. So we've got 94% as yes, which is awesome. I think that's actually great. So, and even hopefully for those who say no and not sure, I can convince you during this session that it really is a key enabler that can help you drive out a more effective business. Okay, so if we move on, if we talk about automation, just to put it into perspective, what we mean when we look at automation is actually quite a few things. So if you look at the right bottom, we start with robotic desktop automation, and that's usually the simplest and the easiest point to start with the quickest value. And that's really taking specific tasks and automating those tasks so that you can get your human worker to do less of the mundane work that they don't necessarily need to do. A good example would be capturing an invoice into the ERP when it's already been sent. It's a simple activity. There's no need that someone needs to sit for hours a day just retyping or copy and pasting things into a system. As we progress to the RPA space, that typically includes automation of multiple tasks in a process, which drives out bigger value and allows even more time to be saved. So if it's highly repetitive type work, that's typically ideal candidates to look at in that space. Then as we progress to the right, when we look at ML and the artificial intelligence space, that's really where we get to intelligent automation. So that's where we make technologies like machine learning work for us. So we can look at prescriptive analytics or predictive analytics and actually drive out processes automatically without having to present certain decisions to human stakeholders. And even with deductive analytics, pivot in the process so that you have dynamic process flows, without needing to take time from people to make those decisions. As you start on the left as well, that's where you start with your simplest, and you typically grow through the right to the more complex data-driven type automations. So with that said, that's a nice overview, but what does that actually mean from a technology perspective? So if we look at the different technologies that are currently available, there's about 6 classifications that we see. And if we start on the left, so that's typically through system integration been the traditional way of automating certain things. A good example would be if you need to interface between an HR system and your Syspro ERP, the easiest way would be to integrate the 2 systems and have that process flow through end to end. It's still very relevant, and I think we still see quite a lot of that, but it tends to be a slower and slightly more complex exercise in most cases. The second is workflow, and that's traditionally what a lot of organizations have adopted over the past decade. And when I think about workflow, it's typically routing either a document for approvals or just guiding people through a process with auditability and automated progression so that we can complete the process. The way that it differs from your bots and your RPA tools is, in most cases, I wouldn't really see workflow requiring a bot as part of the process, or you might have a task in the process that is done by a bot, but the flow is still maintained typically by your workflow engine. If we move on to the right, computer vision has really changed the way that we can automate specific things. So starting from simple activities like OCR, where you can read and interpret a document and remove that task from a person, through to identification and tracking of objects and items in photo or video, which really could save people from having to sit and watch a piece of security footage the whole day, as a good example. Then if we move to some of the newer technologies, if we look at cognitive agents, what we see quite a lot is in the organizations or in enterprise organizations, digital assistants being built. So that's essentially, if you think in the traditional way, creating a PA that really helps you to do the things that you don't have time for. So I might have a query around a policy, and instead of having to call my line manager or call HR and find out, am I interpreting this policy correctly, I could simply ask my digital assistant, so am I allowed to smoke on the balcony at the boardroom? And it would tell me, no, Johan, the smoking policy and the company policy states you have to be 50 meters away from any door, which means you cannot smoke on that balcony. And I don't need to actually then take time from my line manager or take time from someone in HR that they could be spending a lot better. So the difference, once again, between this and an RPA bot would be that a digital assistant is a chat interface that would typically interact with these execution bots or intelligent processes at the back end. The center block, if we look at automation through decision intelligence, that's really where we start bringing artificial intelligence and cognitive computing into the wash. A good example of that is IBM Watson being deployed in the US to handle minor legal incidents. And it's actually proven very effective for legal firms to implement that, because they can now process simple legal cases without even allocating a lawyer to interact with their customers. And the same applies for automated diagnosis of minor diseases in some of the hospitals. So really some interesting things that come to light. It is always a bit more complex, but wonderful things that you can do in that space. Then we look at execution intelligence, which is probably the most prominent of the bunch that I encounter in the market at the moment. And that's where you use tools like Automation Anywhere or OpenRPA to really take some of the tasks that shouldn't necessarily be handled by a person and automating that. And that could be things like, simulating entry into a system, data entry into a system, through to just doing certain activities in the back end, or assisting, a live person in processing things quicker. And a good example, once again, would be if I have a query for my cell phone contract and there's a billing inquiry, then I could very likely be process that entire transaction by interacting with a bot instead of a contact center agent at the cell phone provider's contact center. So I once again would like to just throw up a quick poll. At the moment, something I encountered quite a lot is people feeling threatened by automation and having this feeling that it'll take away their jobs. So either from your own perspective or that of your workforce, do you see automation, or do they see automation as a threat? And it's always interesting to see the results on this. So while I go through the slide, please complete the poll and we'll chat about that a bit at the end. So on this, I want to start at the left bottom. So what automation is and it isn't. So firstly, what it's not industrial robots. So that's not what we see when we talk about automation. It's not talking robots, so it's not the iRobot movie. And we believe it's definitely not the digital workforce completely replacing your human complement. In fact, if we look at the top left, what we see automation really doing is emulation of human worker respective tasks. So that would be doing things that you would usually do without big changes in your technology stack or in your processes. Automation of activities across functions or business units. So, something that I've personally struggled with is, the process of onboarding a person into my organization. So prior to the person onboarding, there's a lot of paperwork that needs to be done. That needs to go to HR. It needs to flow to payroll. Then there's IT equipment that needs to be ordered, etc. And even though we're an integrated organization, it's still disparate functions that don't always work that well together. So the ability to connect those functions in a simple fashion with, without complicating people's lives is really one of the key things that I think we can benefit from. Data integration from multiple systems, also extremely relevant. If you look at the mining and manufacturing space, a good example in manufacturing would be, if your production suddenly increases, your stock that you need to buy would obviously also increase. And in most cases, there's a big disjoint between your OT and your MES type systems and potentially your ERP. So without necessarily having to view reports and send lots of emails, we can actually take the data from the MES layer, interpret that, and pre-prepare or automate your stock fulfillment so that you are geared for production of higher volumes. And then I think lastly, the simple way to think about how automation can help you. It's not a replacement of the bots acting as a brain. It's really acting as the hands, feet, and eyes. So it literally is an assistant that can do the running, the grabbing, and the reading for you, and allow you to focus on more valuable activities. Then some of the benefits that are very relevant. So enhanced customer experience. So if you, especially in the sales and customer service space, if you can speed up the time in which a customer gets serviced, it drives customer satisfaction. And I think it's a very relevant topic, especially looking at retail, where brand loyalty has really, really, really gone down and the retailers are desperate for retaining customers. Process efficiencies, as we have less stops in a process, the process becomes more efficient, but we're also able to identify bottlenecks a lot more or a lot easier if we have automated processes that we can monitor. And that allows us to either supplement the process with additional people, if it's a people-centric task, or build bots to ease the flow through those bottlenecks. Productivity increases, the less time I have to sit and do mundane work, the more I can focus on valuable and productive work. And that's really, I think, one of the key things that we see as an outcome. The next one, especially if we look at RPA, the robotics process automation side of things, there tends to be very quick return on investment if you select your processes to automate correctly. We've seen cases where we've shown ROI within a period of 6 weeks, which is phenomenally fast, considering what investments are required. Improved accuracy, so taking away the risk of human error in certain processes also reduces your risk. The next one, bots don't get tired. Sometimes they get sick, so you have to manage them as you would manage a normal workforce, but they don't get tired. They can work 24/7. And I think that just allows you to increase your throughput and bandwidth significantly in certain processes. And then when it comes to employee engagement, the younger workforce in a lot of cases prefers a digital engagement platform. They don't necessarily want to work with people face to face in certain scenarios. And we've seen quite a lot of that actually. So allowing people to engage through different channels also helps with engaging your employees more effectively. All right. So as I mentioned in the previous slide, so selecting the ideal processes to automate is always quite important. So what we have is, typically if we look at processes that can be automated across any organization, irrespective of the industry, then typically these processes the shared services type processes are ideal candidates. Now, around the shared services processes, I'll actually dive into it a bit more, but these processes tend to be admin intensive. They tend to be cost drivers, not revenue drivers, and that makes them ideal candidates for automation. Once again, just looking at the process is not necessarily the right answer. So what we need to look at is how do you take a process, so let's say in finance and accounting, and dive into the sub-processes and then select the ideal candidates to automate. And this heat map shows a good example of what are the great ones to automate, which are the blocks in green. Some of the good candidates that are in blue, and the gray blocks are really the areas where we would say don't really go and try and automate that. And I think that the challenge with this is, in your organization, you might think that, look, supplier and vendor management is a pain for me. I really want to automate that. But automating it might not be the right answer. Automating for other processes to free up time from your finance team might actually be the better answer, so that those individuals can focus on personalized vendor management. And that's quite an important one. So that will either drive you to success, or it could drive you to showing zero return on investment if you automate the wrong processes. So I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind. All right, so before we jump into the use cases, I actually forgot to queue up the results of the previous poll. So if we can maybe have a quick look at the results of the previous poll. So, looking at this, the response is quite interesting. Typically, we get a slightly higher count or percentage of people that still sees a bit of a threat to the job, but still 20% I think is quite high. And the reality is, depending on the industry that you're in and the cultures that you work with, a lot of the time, we do see that threat and the fear factor coming in when it comes to automation. And my advice is always to drive out good communication programs, when it comes to automating, so that you can convince people that this would actually be beneficial to them. It's not a threat. So thank you for the responses. What I want to do now is just quickly jump into 3 practical use cases of some of our Syspro customers that's automated, certain processes. So the first one would be a service center or a contact center, automation or process automation. Second would be supplier onboarding and some statutory updates, and then accounts payable. So looking at the first example, so this is a retailer that deals with your end consumer, and they get quite a lot, or quite a high volume of service requirements. So breakages and things that needs to be repaired, and that needs to be checked against warranties, etc. So the typical process that we went through initially was customers would come in and book a device in at the store. There would then be manual logging of the information on a manufacturer system, then on the customer system, then quite a few manual interactions in the back end to create job cards, etc. And through this all, there was a lot of quite a high amount of human error, because the store workers weren't as well motivated to capture information correctly. So from an automation perspective, we essentially automated the process and said, when the customer books the device in, we automate the logging onto the manufacturing system or the manufacturer's system, and we verify the warranty status and the purchase status to ensure that the device is either under warranty or we can charge the customer for repairs. We then create a job and a sales order in Syspro for the repair automatically, and then the device goes through repairs. We then need to process invoicing and collect the money from the customer, which is something that wasn't done that well previously because of the human error element. And then we move on to manage reverse logistics and return the spares to the manufacturer and return the device to the customer based on the standard returns process. So the benefits that they achieved is a reduced time to book in devices, which optimizes the flow in the stores and allow people to interact with more customers. There's a significant reduction in human error, so a lot less typos going in and incorrect warranty status is being selected. High improvement in customer experience. Everything goes quicker and you get your device back and it's actually done efficiently. So a great improvement in customer experience. And the big driver in this case was a drastic increase in revenue recovery due to the reduction in human error. Previously, the incorrect capture of warranty statuses meant that the wrong entity would be billed and they would then actually lose out on revenue. So big revenue driver in the end in this example. The next use case is for one of our customers in the mining sector. And any highly regulated sector would, I think, have the same challenges that we solved or tried to solve over here. So essentially, this looks at supplier onboarding and management of the statutory requirements for suppliers in the space. What happens quite a lot in this space is, customers accidentally source from their suppliers while the supplier's compliance status is non-compliant, because they simply don't know. So in the South African context, every year you need to supply an updated BEE certificate and tax clearance, etc., for you to meet most compliance requirements. So in this case, a portal was developed for supplier onboarding and management. It allows the suppliers to self-register and upload all their documents, so thereby saving time from the procurement team where they previously had to do that or retype from paper forms. It would then also remind the supplier annually that their documents are about to expire and they then need to update those documents. Otherwise, they'll be flagged as a non-compliant supplier on the Syspro side. So we also have integration to Syspro where we push the supplier data and the supplier statuses through to the ERP, but we don't have this backwards and forwards to see whether suppliers are actually compliant. We actually then expanded it, so from a statutory reporting perspective, the customer needs to feed back annually on their reporting, and that's quite a hefty job to do manually. So we've automated that process. And the next step that we're looking at is actually automating the accounts payable process through the same interface. So if I'm a supplier, I can just upload my invoice and it will then be processed automatically if everything matches up. So the goals achieved, once again, a reduction in human effort and human error. The human effort reduction sitting specifically in the procurement and the supply chain team. Improved compliance and a reduced risk of fines due to non-compliance. And I think once again, it's that non-compliance was more accidental than anything else, but it's still non-compliance and certain fines were hedged. All right, then if we move on to the last one. So a process that I think is relevant for automation in any organization, accounts payable processing. So that really is automating the process from receipt of an invoice through to extracting that data, automatically matching that to the purchase order data in your ERP. If there's no exceptions or variances, then match that up and send that for approval to payment. So the amount of time saved in your finance department is significant because there's no manual checking. You also reduce the risk of human error. I might mistype or misread a zero, which, that's quite a significant thing on an invoice. And, that causes people to have to interact constantly with the ERP. So taking away that effort, it also improves supplier relationships. We end up with less disputes, and we also don't have employees dealing with supplier disputes every single day. And I think it supports the overall optimization of the finance functions, as your finance team can then spend time on high value interactions and not on retyping invoices. So that's really a prominent one. And, I must say, even our internal finance team benefits from this significantly. We've implemented that in some of the divisions. Really is a high value, quick process to automate. All right, then I think in close, a few things to consider that we always advise people we deal with to look at is to achieve success in if you drive out an automation initiative. It's important to define a strategy, and define a plan based on what you want to achieve. So you have to really go and look at what are those drivers that will change my business. Do I need to save cost? Do I need to improve my customer experience? And then define that strategy to support those drivers. Failing to do that will cost you a lot of money and it won't show value. So I think that's a very important point and a place to start. You also need leadership buy-in and the cultural adoption so that you don't get that threatened feeling that people think they'll lose their jobs. And you need the top-down support to successfully drive out a good initiative. There will be some changes to your operating model, governance and responsibilities and roles that needs to be considered. So be cognizant of that. What we found works well, whether it's a big or a small organization, is share those successes. Measure the value that's shown, share the successes, and then you get people excited and they actually want to be part of that initiative. Engage your functions early because this is typically a business initiative, not a technology initiative, but it's supported by technology. And you need to have the HR team, the technology team, and the business teams working together to really drive out success. Select the right processes. I think once again, that's very valuable, especially when you're starting out. You want to show value. So be wise and take an objective look at which are the valuable processes to automate. Then don't only stop at things like RPA. I truly think it's worthwhile exploring the long-term value of intelligent automation. That's really where we see the world going in the next 5 years, and organizations really becoming more competitive using those technologies. And I think more for the technology side of it, use reusable assets. Redeveloping things over and over is costly and it's time consuming. There's a lot of reusability when you look at automating processes. And I think at the bottom, our advice is engage with a partner that has experience in the space while you're building your own capacity. If I look at the experiences we've gained across different industries, and how that's helped customers just leapfrog ahead in their journeys, it really is worthwhile to engage a partner that has the experience and can guide you. And then I think just lastly, a few of the different technologies that you can consider, especially in the RPA space. In the Syspro world, we see quite a nice gel between Automation Anywhere and Syspro, but there's quite a few different tech around. So AA, UiPath, OpenRPA, Microsoft's Power Automate, etc. And yes, that's essentially me. So over to Deirdre for the Q&A.
Great, thanks, Johan. That was really, really insightful. And I think, you know, just so much to consider. And I think this is where sometimes the challenge of going on any form of automation journey is just about where do we start and what are all the different approaches that one can have. I am going to wait for some questions. I see we haven't got any questions yet. So normally that tells me you either did a fabulous job or everyone's busy doing their coffee. So let's see if any questions come up. But Johan, I wanted to ask a quick thing. I know I've often had these discussions and a lot of our clients have gone on this journey and just general discussions in the industry. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges, though, that stops or prevents businesses from embarking on an automation project?
So, Deirdre, to be honest, the biggest blocker that I usually see is people think it's a mammoth exercise that's going to be highly complex and you need to plan this thing out for the next 5 years, which is not the case. We believe in taking an agile approach while having a structured plan. So yes, get a strategy in place. If you want to hyper automate, at least plan it out and decide why you want to do it, but then start small and grow. You know, you can start without reinventing the processes in your entire organization and still show a lot of value. And over time, you can start doing the bigger and bigger things. So mostly that's one of the barriers of entry that I see, you know, customers struggle with, especially considering, you know, if there's a sponsor in the organization and they're struggling to sell this to the board or to their peers, that tends to be, you know, the big thing.
Perfect. And I think that is true. And I think also what talks to that as well is, I think the realization that automation is not something we start and stop. I think it's a continuous journey, right? We started, and that's why often in automation discussions or digital transformation discussions, we see the step approach. You see the rung ladder. You start small and you build and you build and you build. And it's really a journey that we continuously evolve in as a business to try and continuously add more value as well. There has come a question across on the Q&A. In Pastel, there's an option to load CSV formatted bank statements into the accounting system. Oh, does Syspro have this option? Okay, so I'll take this one. Johanna, I wouldn't expect you to answer this. So sorry, to confidence with regards to the question, I can honestly say there is a way currently that you can actually bring in your bank statements, but watch our roadmap space. We are busy doing some work in this area as well to make it even more easier and flexible for our clients. Another comment just come up and it says, what is the capacity to integrate with other automation tools such as MS Flow, MS Forms, etc.? Johan, I know Microsoft, you've got a strong Microsoft background. Your thoughts on MS Flow and Forms?
So I think from my perspective, the players in the market at the moment are so similar. So, you know, whether you look at a tool like Automation Anywhere or UiPath, or you look towards the Microsoft, you know, Power Suite, it's actually pretty simple. So you can use Power Automate to do the, let's say, the human interaction simulation. Through Flow or even through Logic Apps, you can do the integrations if you have the integration automation requirement. So it's not very complex. You know, I would say irrespective of the platform, the processes would be fairly similar. So, you know, we do see quite a high adoption of the Microsoft Power Platform just because it's part and parcel of that ecosystem. So yes, definitely a good platform to use. And the Syspro APIs are quite extensive. So, you know, it's simple enough to integrate and interact with Syspro on that.
Great, thanks. Must admit, I'm also quite a big fan of Flow, and I think yes, once we get an understanding of how, you know, that integration layer works generally between one application or the other, that's half your battle won. It's then just about understanding the different tool sets themselves. Another question that came about, and I must admit, I was wondering about this as well. You gave us, 3 nice use cases that you guys as a team have worked with on some of our clients. So the one question that did come through was, what were the kind of timelines though? Realistically, how long would one expect one of those projects or use cases to take? Are we talking a couple of weeks? Are we talking months? Are we talking years? What is that timeline expectation?
So if I have to take the 3 use cases, and if I recall correctly, so they actually go from most complex to least complex, ironically. So the first one was purely an integration automation. So that is the more complex route to follow, but it was a complex use case. So that was a question of a few months. So I would, if I recall correctly, it's about three months journey to get that done, because the planning, etc., also required some careful consideration. The second, the supplier portal and automation of that, the vendor compliance side of things, definitely a shorter engagement. If I'm not mistaken, it's about an 8 to 10 weeks cycle from start to finish. So having it live. And then accounts payable depends on your internal processes. We've seen accounts payable being automated in 3 weeks. We've seen it being done in 6 weeks. It also depends on the suppliers and the breadth of supplier base that you work with. But yeah, that's a lot quicker, and it's a lot more standardized.
Great. And then just on kind of around that, I suppose one of the other questions that's come up is with regards to some of the use cases and some of the discussions you were having this morning. A question's come up is, do you need to buy those integration tools, or is this a platform that Ioka uses to integrate?
So that's also always a very interesting topic. So integrating in the modern day, I think is really the consideration. So ideally, you want to move to the cloud native, decoupled type world where you've got API management and you have a microservices layer when you integrate. So that's ideally the way I would advise from an architectural perspective that you look at it. What that means is you need some API management technology. So whether you consume that from AWS, you use Microsoft's the Azure Service Bus, or you might have some or buy some on-premise technologies that you want to use. That would be kind of the advised route. Look, you can do direct API integration, although in most cases it makes your management and supportability, it affects that quite adversely. So I would say the right answer would be use a microservices or an integration technology. Consume the cloud services; they are phenomenal. I'm a big fan of both AWS and Azure, and they've done a lot of the hard work for you. So they are pre-built connectors to a lot of your enterprise platforms. That really makes sense. But yes, essentially, I'd say the right answer would be spend a little bit of money on that, and you'll be future-proofing your technology.
True. And I think, it's just that often reminders, often cases we also go into these discussions, and I think people are so not always aware of the current tool sets they actually already have available, that just didn't know that they were there. If you're already a Microsoft user, you already have so much access to those products like Flow. If you're a Syspro user, you've already got the business objects, our workflow, our bots. And sometimes it's just about being able to bring all of those technologies together. They're there already. It's just maybe you haven't leveraged them or been exposed to them yet. So it's also about that understanding what your current tool set has as well, and how best to get those coming forward and being leveraged. Johan, we are running short on time, and I know we need to move on to our next speaker, but there is one more question I just wanted to quickly put forward. Do you think, will AI and automation be developed in conjunction with the human factor? So the example here was, do you think that we'll start to see a way where, for example, bots are set to work during working hours only, this way preventing people from feeling like their assistants doing a better job than they are? Do you think we're going to start seeing that trend where whilst we do talk about a bot being 24/7, we might want to start bringing them into normal working hours as well?
So it's an interesting philosophical debate, and I actually came across a discussion like this quite recently, where for one of our customers actually has to create a person for the bots to have access to all of their systems of records. So they actually need to create a digital worker, which means they started thinking, well, what does that actually mean for us? Do we have to think about rights for bots and things like that? Look, I think it's still early days. I wonder about it. I honestly don't know. It would be really interesting. Practically, I see the bots as really driving out efficiency while our lives get easier. And looking at it that way, I wouldn't really want to give them time off. but it's a philosophical debate, and it's a really interesting topic. So I don't know what the answer is.
Yes. That's all good. We'll have to save it for another coffee chat day. But I do think it's one of those areas where we are going to have to see what that blend of digital citizen with human interaction and human involvement, where that really starts to play out in the upcoming years going forward. Johan, I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate your time this morning. I think you gave us a lot of insights, a lot of things to consider on these automation journeys. So really, thank you once again for your time this morning. Really appreciate it.
Great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great, thanks. So from a world of automation, we are starting to see and experience that digital citizens are coming to the fore. Syspro started the journey of digital citizens, well over 2 years already with our latest release of Syspro 8, and very much along the lines of a digital assistant, in the sense that our bot allows you to query stock, query customer accounts, create sales orders, create purchase orders, and really just through a bot interface and a bot experience, have that Syspro virtual assistant in essence. And part of this journey, quite some time back, we started getting clients reaching out, and one of the clients that did reach out is our next speaker, part of the Bidvest group. But before I introduce Lauren, I just want to quickly bring up a poll for everyone on the call. So earlier on when we started, we chatted about where you are in South Africa or Africa actually joining us on the call today. So I just want to get a bit of quick insight. What position are you in within the organization? Are you in the finance team or one of the finance positions? Are you in the technology space, CIO, IT manager, something along those lines? Are you in auditing? Are you in the auditing space by any chance? Internal audit, financial audit, any of those audit functions, or are you in a general other, so potentially a supportive role of one of the other 3 spaces? So the poll is up quickly. If you've had some time, just quickly answer that, and then let's have a quick look and see who's actually online with us from that positioning perspective, if we can see those results. Okay, so a fair amount of people in the finance space, which is really great to have everyone online with us. And then a fair amount, not too surprisingly, considering it is a digital transformation series, 45% sitting in that CIO, IT manager, IT technology space. And I think it's quite important because, often we are having to deal with the requirements and the governance around tech and IT. 4% of the audience is from the auditing space, and then another 24% in the other area. So welcome everyone, really happy to have you all online. And as I was saying, before we did the poll, is that it is this world of digital citizens. And whilst we see our digital citizen coming more into use cases and really enabling that interface into the Syspro ERP, when we engaged with Lauren and them, quite some time back, they were going on a digital journey of their own with their own digital bot. And it was really quite intriguing. And I'm very, very happy to have her on the session today and really talk to us a little bit more about Alice and the journey they've been on. So let me quickly introduce you. Lauren Barrington is the Chief Audit Executive of the Bidvest Group. Lauren is a founding member of and heads up the Alice team. Alice is an audit robot and provides audit as a service in the IT space using cognitive automation, including machine learning, robotic process automation, and artificial intelligence. She automates audit workforces. Lauren also serves as the Chief Audit Executive of the Bidvest Group and has been responsible for the integrated and digital assurance strategies implemented across the group. She is pioneering the futuristic landscape of IT-related audit services, both inside of the Bidvest Group and beyond. During her 16-year tenure in the audit industry, Lauren worked for the South African, Boston, and London offices of PwC before joining the Bidvest Group in 2012. Lauren holds a BCom Honours degree in accounting from the University of Pretoria. She is a qualified CASA and CISA. Lauren received the PwC Experience Award in 2011 and was a top 10 finalist in the SAICA Top 35 Under 35 competition in 2014. Wow, great achievements. She finds reward in equipping her team with the opportunities and skills to be relevant and successful in a disrupted future. And with that, I'd really like to welcome Lauren onto our session this morning. To bridge a world of auditing into digital with a bot is quite a different journey, Lauren, from the traditional auditing space. But really happy to have you with us this morning and really excited to hear your journey and tell us more about Alice. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Deirdre, and thank you to everyone. Right. So meet Alice. Alice is actually a platform that allows you to create digital services to assist in governing, managing, and monitoring your business. And when I was trying to explain this to our board, they were like, who the hell is Alice? So to try and help them understand who Alice is and what our digital journey brought about, we decided that we would put together a video to really help them understand who the hell Alice was. So I'm going to play that video with your permission now, and then I will get back to you.
The world is changing faster than ever before. We've updated the way we live, so isn't it time we update the way we work? Technology landscapes have become sophisticated, business threats are ever evolving, and disruption is inevitable. The need for continuous supervision of your business environment has become critical. Introducing Alice, the real-time overseer of the future. She is a trusted advisor who provides those charged with governance, visibility of the risks and remediation strategies within the business, whether they be financial, operational, IT, regulatory, or compliance related. Her platform allows different stakeholders to create an ecosystem of digital services to help govern, manage, and monitor the business remotely in a near real-time and continuous manner. Alice understands her differing audiences and adapts and integrates her reporting accordingly. She adjusts and accommodates the needs of management, the board, and external auditors. Alice is unequivocally independent, but approachable and always available to answer any technical or assurance-related questions you may have. Alice is comfortable working in all business environments, no matter the geography, the size, posture, maturity, or complexity. She has global reach and is scalable. Her background is in data science, allowing her to employ machine learning and artificial intelligence, making her work ethic both progressive and predictive. With little to no interruption to your business, Alice works quietly in the background. Unless you actually chat to her, you wouldn't even know she was there. Governing and reducing the risk to your business environment is often costly and resource-intensive, but it doesn't have to be with Alice. Delivering always-on audit, always-on monitoring, always-on compliance, and always-on peace of mind.
So So interestingly, after putting that video together and showing it to the board, they then asked me, so who really is Alice and what does she do? So probably not quite what we thought we'd get out of the video, but you know, it's been a journey explaining who Alice is and how Alice helps Bidvest and beyond. So a little bit about our story. As Deirdre mentioned, we come from a PwC stable and we were recruited into Bidvest in 2012, really to transform the internal audit function. It was an underperforming, low-skilled function that really didn't have the respective management and definitely was not enabled by tech. So that was really our mandate, and my team and I from PwC joined Bidvest and started on this transformation. At that stage, it wasn't even a digital transformation, it was just a transformation journey. And for those of you that know the Bidvest group, it is decentralized and it is autonomous. It is federated. There are 351 and counting legal entities within Bidvest, and each of those companies are empowered to run themselves. They have their own management, they have their own systems, they have their own policies, baselines, governance philosophies. They are completely autonomous and are actually empowered to have that autonomy. So from us sitting at the center, it was myself and a team of 4 auditors. It was like having a small consulting firm with 351 clients. And when we started at Bidvest, even though the financial and the operational audit sat within the companies, within the divisions of Bidvest, there was no IT audit capability to begin with. So we saw that as a bit of a low-hanging fruit and decided to embark on this IT audit journey. And it took about 2.5 years for these 4 auditors to go from company to company performing an IT audit within each of the IT environments. And by the end of 2.5 years, we had a really good understanding of what the IT landscape across Bidvest looked like. But it was 2.5 years old. And that we felt was not doing the assurance function justice. And we decided that we needed to solve that problem, not only in IT audit, but in financial audit and operational audit as well. And we had to provide more continuous and more near real-time assurance to management and the other governance stakeholders in the organization. So we decided that we had to introduce technology, and that was really where the concept of Alice was birthed. People often ask me, you know, why Alice? Why did you call her Alice? And there is absolutely no scientific reason behind that name. We just liked it. And then they ask me, why is she a woman? And that one is very easy to answer, and that's because she can multitask. So in 2016, we set up a company called Bidvest Advisory Services. This is the company in which the IP of Alice is housed and has consequently become the company through which Alice is now being commercialized and traded. During 2017, we rolled Alice out across the Bidvest group and really had to eat our own dog food. She was our audit tool, and we had to make sure that she was accurate, that she was scalable, that she was value adding, and also, you know, where she failed, and had to really ingest and digest that feedback and then get back on our horse and fix her and make her better. In 2018, we decided to take her outside of the Bidvest group to really prove different use cases. So even though Bidvest is, you know, very diversified, we have, we operate in 13 different industries, everything ranging from regulated entities like Bidvest Bank and the different insurers, long-term and short-term, through to servicing and distribution in hygiene and guarding and cleaning, through to light manufacturing. The smallest thing we manufacture, I think, is the toothpick. It was important for us to prove use cases outside of the Bidvest group. So we took her to trusted business partners who really understand that, you know, digital transformation is not a silver bullet, and were allowing us to potentially fail, but journey with us in making it a success eventually, and not crucify us if it did fail. So we took her to Standard Bank. And there we were trying to prove that she would be able to withhold or uphold the scrutiny of, arguably the biggest bank in South Africa, and whether she could uphold the likes of Guidance Note 5, offshoring of data, cloud computing, or their security protocols. We took her to Bidcorp because they have presence on every continent, and we wanted to test her globalité and how she could be used remotely. We took her to Dimension Data because their single biggest instance of a user group was 22,000, whereas in the Bidvest stable, the single biggest user group in a company is 6,000. We took her to the likes of Premier Food because it's a very mature control environment, and we wanted to see whether she could add value in a mature control environment. And so the journey went on until we landed up at UiPath in Houston, Texas. And this is our claim to fame because, arguably they are one of the fastest growing tech companies in the US, and they specialize in robotics. And the fact that our bot Alice was auditing their bots just was a really, really cool story for us. And that really led us to opening up presence in the US through a company called Janus Advisory and Consulting, and they do all our implementations in the US for us. And here we are now talking to you. So, the first thing that we started with on our digital transformation journey was, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? What is the challenge that we're trying to solve? And really come up with a solution. And if that solution happens to involve technology and digital transformation, great. But we really had to understand what was the problem and what was the challenge that we were trying to solve, because just deploying tech for the sake of it just becomes an expensive and time-consuming exercise. But deploying tech as part of a solution to a problem is game-changing. And these were the challenges that we were trying to solve when we came up with the concept of Alice. And obviously it was very contextualized to the Bidvest group, but because Bidvest operates in so many industries, has so many systems, has so many IT environments, there is no shared infrastructure, there are no common domains, there is no one AD, there's over 700 ADs. The control environments differed in size, in complexity, in posture, and in maturity. There were remote geographies. No one was in the same place. There were different forms of IT partnerships. Some were in-sourced, co-sourced, outsourced. Sometimes the FD was dueling as the IT manager. Complex aggregation and consolidation structures, not only of financial audit information, but of operational and IT information, when you're trying to consolidate through a single lens what those environments look like for 351 companies. We were finding that we were rehashing the same information over and over again, just depending on who the stakeholder was. If it was the board or the audit and risk committees, we had to display that information in a certain way, versus if it was for management, for monitoring capabilities, we had to display information in another way. If it was for external audit, it was another way. And even the way I wanted to see it in my role was another way. And we just spent a lot of time rehashing the same information, just depending on the audience. We also found that the audits were becoming more technical in nature as the businesses within Bidvest were progressing in their own digital transformation journey and introducing technologies like robotics and like cloud and like ML and like AI, to find an auditor that, one, understood those technologies, but then also knew how to audit them, and then also still wanted to be in audit. It was like finding a unicorn. So we had to harness those capabilities and build them into Alice. And this was really, these problems or challenges drove the spec of Alice. So, what does the Alice solution look like? We like to think of her in 3 pillars. The first pillar being the data. If she cannot connect to the data, she can't audit. So being able to connect to the data no matter where it resides is critical. And that data can reside in ERPs, in IoT devices, in clouds, in databases, or data lakes, in IoT devices, which I've said, in PDF documents and screen prints. It really doesn't matter where the data resides. Alice must be able to connect to it. And actually, that was what Deirdre referenced earlier in the conversation. There are a lot of bid-based companies that use Syspro, and we wanted to integrate into Syspro in order to build monitoring capabilities on top of that. And kudos to Syspro, because to integrate or to build a Syspro Alice connected with Syspro and using their objects was such a pleasure. Okay, so in order to connect to the data, Alice can do it via 4 mechanisms. The first one being the Alice connector. This is a bespoke custom built connector that knows what data Alice needs and presents it to Alice in what we call an audit ready format. If she connects to cloud-based systems, there are often APIs available. We would leverage those APIs, but we found that the APIs often do not expose enough data that's required for audit purposes. So they would require some customization in order to be fit for purpose for Alice. We still allow manual uploads. This is very easy for financial and operational data. There are required schemas, and we do that mapping exercise and uploading the data to a folder that Alice can then sweep. No problem. It becomes a little bit more tricky when you're uploading IT data, because often that is a lot of config data, which is just more difficult to manually upload. And then we use robotic technology. We have a partnership with UiPath, just given our history, but it really doesn't matter what technology we use here. It can be Automation Anywhere, Blue Prism, WorkFusion, doesn't matter. And we really take our guidance from our clients in terms of what bot technology they have in their environment already, because often if the bot is not working 24/7, they often have spare capacity, and that spare capacity can then be repurposed to go and fetch the data and bring it into Alice. This data then goes through what we call a data pipeline. We've worked really hard on this data pipeline. It's where the data is ingested. If it is unstructured data, like in a PDF document or a contract or a screen print, it needs to be then structured into a digital format using various OCR capabilities. The data is then wrangled and cleaned and then stored as a data asset that then can be used by Alice. When the data gets into Alice, we think of, we chunk it up into 3 kind of chunks. The first one being the pre-built digital services or audit procedures, if you wish. Those are the ones that we've built and we've hardened enough that it really is a plug and play, that they've been used in so many environments that we feel comfortable that they will run in pretty much any environment, and no matter what is thrown at Alice, she will still be able to cope with that variance. Then it is bringing your own or building your own customized digital services. And we'll talk a little bit about on the next slide what that means, but that would really mean, you know, where you want to digitally transform, what do you want to do, what problem you're trying to solve, and how can we customize that for you. And then especially in the audit space, we acknowledge that auditors have spent their lives perfecting audit procedures. And you know, when they've got really smart, they've automated them to an extent through the likes of scripting. And we say, you know, don't waste that. Bring it onto the platform. We'll help you globalize it and scale it and run it remotely across different businesses or different geographies or different locations. But don't waste what you've done. And essentially that is the philosophy of Alice. She wouldn't want to replace or displace any of the tech that has been invested in. She wants to connect to it, understand the data, and then perform intelligence and opinions on top of that data to help govern and manage and monitor businesses. So once the procedures have been applied to the data, she then visualizes them through APIs that can be in the Alice working papers or dashboards. And trust me, the working papers were built by auditors for auditors, so they can be used for external audit reliance purposes. They can stand up in the court of law. Turns out, you know, based on the feedback when we were eating our own dog food in Bidvest, that auditors are not very creative. And we actually received initially a lot of criticism in terms of our working papers. They didn't like the colors, they didn't like the scroll bars, they didn't like the drill downs, they didn't like the font size, they didn't like the font. And, you know, it's very discouraging actually hearing that, because you feel like saying to them, you know, I've just built an audit brain, but let's focus on the colors and the font size. We've recently embedded Power BI into Alice so that you can visualize any of the results or outcomes and interrogate them further in Power BI. And we also then integrate into any GRC or BI tool of choice. We often found that as much as we would like to visualize it in Alice herself, for Alice to become sticky, people actually want to log into what they used to logging into and seeing the results in the way that resonates with them. So building that integration or availing the data points to be integrated into any of the tools of choice is completely possible. We're just going to talk a little bit about, you know, where our vision has gone in terms of digital transformation. And, you know, we are auditors, and keeping audit professionals relevant and helping them to keep the pace of the business and management, so that as the business transforms, so does the audit function transform. We really wanted to equip the audit function, or any governance function, the compliance function, the risk function, with an easy way of digitalizing their own processes. And that's where the Alice Lab comes into play. And in the Alice Lab, we really follow this equation. And even though data scientists would cringe because this equation makes no sense to them, it does work for explanation purposes. The first thing we would look at is, what data assets are we trying to form? Where are we getting our data? What data points do we need? How does that data need to be ingested and transformed, and actually create a data asset on which the digital services or procedures need to be performed? We then start with human intelligence and translate that into a reusable algorithm. So really try and get inside, you know, what is the business logic? What is the business rules? What subject matter expertise do we need to incorporate here? What are the assumptions? What is the professional skepticism or judgment that is usually done by the human? And how do we translate that into an algorithm in Alice? We would then enhance those procedures if required using data science capabilities within Alice. So from basic data analytics or CATs, if you're an auditor, right through to predictive analytics and data modeling. And then, you know, embedding some AI capabilities into further enhancing these procedures, whether it be fuzzy logic or deduplication or anomaly detection or historical contextualization in modeling. We would then build that capacity into what could be a very, very simple procedure to start with. Often the OCR capability is right up front in getting to your data asset. So in reading the unstructured data and putting it into a structured data. And this was really to give auditors or governance stakeholders the tools and the capabilities and equip them to have these skills to digitalize their processes in not a very complex manner. So, I mean, you heard it in the video, the platform is secure and scalable, it's real-time and continuous, it's intelligent and automated, and it's system and industry agnostic. And that was one of the things that we had to build for from the beginning, because in our digital transformation journey, Bidvest being a very entrepreneurial company, they were not going to invest in governance if it wasn't going to show an ROI or certainly value to the business. So our value proposition to Bidvest when we were asking them for funds to do this was, you know, we will build Alice and we will de-risk Bidvest for you, but we will build it with commercialization in mind so that we can repay the loan that we're asking for. And that was quite a fundamental shift in terms of how we had to think about designing and building Alice with a little bit of an end picture in mind. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. This was really just for people that can't picture what Alice does. Is, when you log into, you have what we call different apps or modules, and these can be groupings of anything really. So in this demo environment, we've got cyber, we've got users, we've got databases, we've got anti-money laundering, and we've got payroll. But you could design your digital services to look different countries, different geographies, different divisions, different branches. The way you structure your dashboard is completely up to you, or different areas of controls, and really to give you a health check of your environment and how you see your environment. The outside ring is really how well is the process designed, and the inner ring is it operating effectively. So let's take this one, for example. Really, really good controls in terms of a design perspective, but they're not being followed. Alice is saying there are control breakdowns happening all the time. That's the view that I would often use just to get a snapshot of what the control environment is looking like. We then go in further, and that would be clicking into one of those modules to see what are the processes in those modules. Has Alice finished her work, and what are the findings? If we go a level deeper, we get into the working papers. These are the controls that Alice has tested, and she will then highlight to you, like in this example, there's definitely findings, and there's some medium and some critical. So that would be something that you'd need to look at. Sorry if this definitely is very audity. These are the working papers. This is where she'd show you the outcomes. In this case, she had no exceptions. She'd give you the risk, and she'd also then make some recommendations. She shows you when she last reviewed the evidence that has come in and when she last tested it. And you can see it's been done by Alice. If there was any manual override or if there was any human intervention, this would be flagged here. We're now going to look at these two tabs. This one is where you manage the evidence. She will show you exactly where she got her data. You can download it and you can go and reperform what she did. So there's no magic involved. You can absolutely see what Alice did to what data in what way. And then the last one is really training Alice in terms of the context of your environment. So if she's come up with some findings or funny users on your system in this example, you can then say to her, no, Alice, you know what, David Smith is the same as D Smith, even though there's no common or unique identifier between payroll and Active Directory. But no, they are the same person. You can accept that and train her, and the next time she does her audit, she won't raise that as an exception. Okay, then where she's actually morphed to, she had humble beginnings as an IT auditor back in 2017. But what we found is that, we did the IT audit, and, it was actually quite underwhelming, because once you've deployed her, she does her audit within minutes, and, it was like, okay, well, it's over. And everyone was like, well, what else do you have? And at that stage, we had nothing. And that's where we really had to think about, well, what else can Alice do? How else can Alice help? And now, because she's morphed into a platform, she can help any stakeholder. Anything, if you want to monitor anything financial, she can help. If you want to monitor security for the CIO, she can help. If you are an auditor, she can digitalize your audits. If you are a compliance auditor, she can give real-time and continuous insights into the non-compliant activities against regulation. Or if you are in, risk, how to do real-time risk profiling. It really depends, as I say, on what is the problem that you're trying to solve, what is the challenge, because without deeply understanding that, you can actually end up achieving nothing, even if you do use tech. And then the other part of my story is, and I think Johan alluded to it as well, that you don't have to do a big bang. You can really start small. You can start digitalizing one process or one control or one monitoring capability. It can be very simple. It can be just comparisons of two data sets, right through to enhancing those digital capabilities to using predictions and NLP or whatever the case may be. But the point is, the two big lessons that I learned is make sure you understand your problem, and you don't have to go the big bang. You can start really small, prove the value, and so it becomes a bit of like a rolling stone effect, where it gathers momentum and people want to jump on board, and you suddenly, if we do this, can we do that, and can we add that, and can we change that, and so the journey goes on. And that is really my story. Thank you, Deirdre.
Thanks, Lauren. And what a great story. I must admit, every time we talk, I always enjoy discussing the Alice journey more and more. And I think, just going back to the beginning of your story, I think what I really loved the most was, you as a team had a decision in the beginning. You could try and change this business, which is very autonomous and really is the way Bidverse works, and it works, and you don't want to change that ethos of how the group works. Or you could look to technology to solve the problem. And I think that's what I love about the journey you've gone on with Alice, is you kind of went, you know what, we need to work for business, not business work for us. And Alice really, really talks to that outcome and that result that you guys have achieved.
Thanks. Yeah, they weren't going to change.
No, but I think that's sometimes the thing is we want to fight to change, but realize change was not the answer. Getting business to change is not the answer. Yeah. And I think that's what Alice just really highlights quite well, is that you can achieve what you need to achieve in different ways. There is a quick question. Someone has asked a question while you were chatting, and they really wanted to know if you sell the Alice license to independent internal auditors. So you know the commercialization of Alice is one of the things that you guys definitely are looking more focusing on. You want to give us a bit more insight?
Yes. So in summary, absolutely, we have commercialized Alice. She is available. You're welcome to log on to our website or contact me or whatever. But that was one thing that we didn't really have room to fail, because we had a huge loan to pay off. So failure was not an option. So yes, we actually have commercialized her now, and she is available.
Fantastic. And what has your response been? I mean, Alice obviously has been working in the group quite a while now. Have people now finally embraced her? Can you imagine life without her?
It's been an interesting journey, because for people were skeptical. I think for the first 2 years, we spent more work reperforming what Alice did manually by ourselves to prove to them that she got to the right answer, that she used the right data, that she didn't, go rogue. We really had, they would look at the results and be like, well, that's not in my environment. And we'd be like, it is, and have to really go and reperform it manually and build that trust. It wasn't an automatic trust at all. So a lot of change management and relationship building. And even though we're using the spot, I think we've never interacted more with management in our lives in those first 2 years. But as that trust has been established, now she is part of their lives. And now she's become that single lens where they're like, can we build another integration into her? Can we have another view? Can we put in another control? So that's been really nice from a management point of view. From an audit point of view, I think there was initially a fear of, what does this mean for me? But I think, our team has been a living kind of testimony of, it actually makes you busier, because suddenly you can do more, you have more scope, you've got more things to test, it's more real time, you actually get to do the more fun stuff and not the dog work of actually doing all the testing and gathering the evidence, but actually interpreting the results and interacting with management. But that's been that's also been a journey. And I think from a personally an audit perspective, is auditors are scared of technology just by default. I mean, I know that's a huge generalization, but to really get them comfortable that they themselves don't actually have to audit it, but can use it to perform their audits. Yeah.
It's that trust factor, right? It's just amazing what an influence it actually has. But I think, everything you've just said so talks to, when we talk digital transformation, it's not about replacing people. It's about really just taking the mundane stuff away, so that as people, we can do the fun stuff. Like, we can really get insight into data. We can really look at our processes and things in different ways. And that's really what we aim to try and achieve with digitalization. It's just that let's take away the mundane stuff. Let's take away all the hard work, the heavy lifting that no one really enjoys doing. And let's really actually just deal with the results and the outputs and the fun side of any part of our jobs, really. Lauren, I am very mindful of the time. We are 1 minute past 12:30. So there was a quick question just about your details. we will be sharing this information, or we will be sharing the presentation and the recording and everything after today's session with everyone, and the details will be on there. So thanks to the person that has asked for the details for Lauren. We will share those with you in an email. Lauren, I can only thank you again. Really, really interesting. Love hearing about Alice. Look forward to the next journey. And thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us today. Really appreciate it.
Such a pleasure. And thank you. Thank you for always being such a great support and believing in us.
Absolute pleasure, and I look forward to working and supporting even more so in the future. But to everyone online, I also just really want to say thank you. This was the last of our 4-part series. It's really been a great series. I hope everyone has enjoyed it as much as we do. Really, really appreciate everyone's participation. Don't forget about that Syspro #DX. Let us know what you think. Share us on your social media platforms. And really thank you everyone for participating. It really has been a great series, and really look forward to seeing you all on the next one as we go forward on the journey. Thanks everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.